Welcome to North Tees and Hartlepool Voices, telling the stories of our people and community in our trust.
My name's Andy Tingle, and this morning I've got the privilege of having the Managing Director of NTH Solutions in the studio, Mr. Mike Worden. Welcome, Mike.
Nice to see you, Andy, again.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've crossed our paths and had a chat and things like that.
I'm not sure someone's ever explained it as a privilege to have one-to-one and be locked in a room with me before, but I'll
no,
take that
it is a privilege to have you down because I know how busy you are on the site and everything else with everything that's going on, and you and the team are flat out completely throughout both sites at the moment, with Hartlepool as well. Yeah, we've brought you in the studios today to talk about a letter to myself. What is a letter to myself?
Well, I mean, in many ways, do you remember the famous adverse? It is exactly, it does exactly what it says on the tin. And I think in many ways that's what this is. It's a very simple concept. But in many ways it's got a lot of deeper, more useful purposes than you might just think it has on the first face of it, particularly in terms of your personal and your professional development. So, for example, a letter to myself, obviously it's a letter to myself. But if you took it in the concept of, as I did, as I'll read out in a moment or two, about a letter to my younger self in the past, you're able to use it in a very reflective way to look at that and think about the journey that you've gone on, is the right word, but I guess it is a journey in terms of personal development. If you took it as a letter to my present self, you could use it as a practice for appreciation or gratitude for what you have or the things that you've gone through. And equally, to your future self, in many ways you can use that for goal setting, or for, again, reflecting on who you want to be in the future. So it's one of those elements that got my interest because it's simple in its nature, and I always like to keep things simple. But actually you can use it in a number of different ways depending on what you feel is going to be most beneficial.
Yeah, you could use it as like a developing tool or whatever else, a reflective tool within yourself.
Yeah.
That's great stuff.
And I guess that brings on to kind of why did I write one, really?
Yes.
There's a number of different reasons for that, if I'm being honest to myself about it. Firstly, I believe in the Schwartz rounds. So I've only done a couple of them, and I'm down to do one shortly around imposter syndrome. But I just believe it's so critically important when we're all so busy to create a space and environment where we take time out from everything and we can sit and openly and safely discuss things that may be weighing heavy on our minds or are in our background thoughts, but we need to give them time to circulate, or just to sit and listen to others. I think that's an incredibly simple yet incredibly powerful way of helping people be themselves. And come to terms with things. So I'm a big believer in it. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a letter to myself, was it first came up in terms of the Schwartz round, and as I say, I'm a big believer. I think a letter to myself, it's one of those things that I very often find myself, or in conversations with other people, when you've had a drink or you sat around with family and friends, you say, I wish I'd known that when I was younger.
Yes.
And so I really bought into the concept of what it could be.
Yeah.
And again, I think there's other uses for it, but for me, I thought it would be quite interesting practice to talk to the younger Mike, and just talk about some of the challenges that with hindsight you look back at and they don't see that big, but when you're a young Mike or a younger version, doesn't have to be a young one, it could be just in any time frame previously, they always seemed so incredibly important at the time. So I thought it was a really good practice. That was one of the reasons. I think thirdly, it's really important in a senior leadership role that if we're going to encourage and recommend that people engage with and do things like the Schwartz round or, address really previously, I think, taboo, maybe not taboo, but hidden topics around your feelings and how there's elements of insecurity or stress and pressure on people that we never really create an environment for that. It's important for me, I think, for senior leaders to lead by example on that.
Exactly.
And to engage with those things and to talk openly about these things, because I hope then that they will encourage other people to engage and get the benefits that I've got from them. There's three things there. I think finally on that last one, when I read my letter, it'll make more sense. And this is certainly not to do with the Schwartz rounds, because that's a very safe and confidential environment. But the challenge I wanted to set myself was to really share the reflections that I've put into my letter to myself, which I'll read, and as people will hear, and they're very personal to me.
Yes.
And I actually invited my daughter to the Schwartz round to sit in the audience. So, she was hearing the things that I'm saying. And I thought there's no better way to really truly test if I'm kind of walking the walk as such, than to actually put myself out there and share these things. I now know from doing things like this that I truly have kind of learned these things as I've gone through it, which is why I want to share the letter, because it was a test for myself to put myself out there and be vulnerable, and I'm okay with it.
You mentioned the Schwartz round and everything else. How did they receive it and the reactions of people there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a confidential, obviously, environment, so I don't want to overly share too many things that were discussed within there. But there was 3 wonderful speakers. I was obviously one of those. Not that I was particularly wonderful, but, the other guys were amazing. The dialogue, I mean, the letters themselves are the letters themselves, but the dialogue and the engagement and the commonality of the themes that were discussed in both, not only the one that we did at Hartlepool, but we replicated it over at North Tees, was wonderful. It really was a great conversation to be had. I won't say any more of the detail around it, because it is confidential in that nature, but I would highly recommend people to attend.
I was just about to say, would you encourage people to write a letter to themselves?
There's 2 answers to that. I mean, that's a very personal answer, I think, so it's up to people to decide their own answer on whether or not they want to do that. But what I will say is, for me, there is something powerful about writing something down. I mean, we often have conversations and various bits, and, we might send messages and texts and WhatsApps and all that stuff. But actually spending the time to sit, reflect, and then write down, physically writing something down, there's something very cathartic and powerful about that.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I would recommend it. A great exercise to do. What you then do with that, don't do anything with it. Just do it as the reflective, cathartic practice that I found it to be, or do more with it. That's up to the individual. But I would highly recommend doing it. Just the benefits that I've had.
Yeah, it's like people writing a diary and things like that. It gives them something to reflect on. Yeah. But to sit down and to write a letter and think about it.
Yeah.
And to open up to yourself, not to
be honest with
other
yourself.
people.
Yeah. Very often we don't.
And
we're not honest with ourselves.
It's when they say it's all right not to be all right and things like that.
Yeah.
Yes, I could well believe how powerful it is, the power of the pen. Thank you for that, Mike. If we can get you to read your story out for us now, please.
Dear Mike, there is an age-old saying that says, the story you tell yourself is the story you will become. And you need to hear our story. I am the only person that will ever truly know you, so for once in your life, will you listen? I know it feels like you've been dealt a tough hand. You wonder why it couldn't be you that is the clever person in the class. Why am I the one that is dyslexic, sent for special remedial lessons while everyone else sits in the normal class? I know you wonder why you're not the popular one who's friends with all the cool kids. I know you don't do some of the things you really want to do, because you're afraid that'll be embarrassing and people might laugh or judge you. I know you desperately want to say hello to the girl you really like, but you daren't. I know you think you're the chubby one, and why am I the one with all the spots while someone else has perfect skin? Why am I the one with 2 left feet and always picked a standing goal? Why am I the one whose parents can't afford to send me on the school trips and who buy my school uniform from the local charity shop? Why am I the one whose parents don't live together? I know these things are very real for you, and life feels very unfair. But I'm afraid there is a reality that life is just not fair. But there is your opportunity, Mike. Life isn't fair, and it's equally unfair to everyone. Life owes you nothing, and if you sit back and blame things for the way they are, or everyone else for having things that you don't, then life will always seem unfair. You need to stop blaming life for the way it is and own your own future. Now here is the best bit. What you believe is unfair right now are actually the things that will drive you to be who you are today. And today is pretty good. Feeling like you're thick and can't learn simply isn't true. You will realise there were reasons for this, and that actually there are different forms of what people call intelligence. But more than any of that, not having things come naturally to you means you learn the value of discipline and hard work. You will learn that nothing of real value is given to you in life, and hard work, consistency, and simply outworking everyone else will more than compensate for any intelligence you think you may or may not have. And actually, you will see that the true value of achievement isn't actually achieving the goal or the outcome which you're working for, but it's the self-belief and the confidence that you'll gain from the dedication and hard work that was needed to reach it. Having the discipline to consistently do the things that you may not want to do in the moment will absolutely give you the things you want in the future. For you, Mike, daily discipline will give you the freedom to be you. I know not being the popular kid feels a very hard one right now, but it means you will learn the incredible power of not needing to be liked. But rest assured, you're not a weirdo or locked up in jail. You will learn to cherish the friends you have and realise that giving someone else the power to make you feel good or bad, based on whether or not they like you or agree with you or laugh at you, is literally crazy. Please listen to this again, Mike. It is so incredibly important for you. Don't give someone else the power to make you feel good or bad. You know what is right or wrong when you do a good job or a bad one. Be your own judge and be very careful with whom you give that power to. Now, with a twist of irony that makes life the puzzle that it is, not needing others' approval will give you belief in yourself. This will give you values. Having values makes you authentic, and ironically, authentic will make people like you. So being the fat, spotty lad picked to be in goal isn't easy. But there is a wonderful thing called genetics. And you may think they're working against you right now, but sometime soon you will start to grow, and when you pick up the rugby ball and a barbell or two, you will never look back. But again, and I want to be very clear on this, Mike, what you have is not God-given, it's earned. So don't sit back and accept things as guaranteed. Go and earn it. So this will be annoying for you right now, but guess what? Mum was right. Playing rugby is good for you. The anger you feel gets channeled on the pitch, and you learn to respect authority while standing your ground and being heard. You learn the value of teamwork and how different skills, strengths and weaknesses are the key to success in a team. So the toughest one for you I've left until last. You feel embarrassed about being the poor kid in class, and I know you feel it's unfair. But this is one you can own, and you do. For good or bad, it will be a driving force for success in your career. So what feels unfair right now will allow you to value what it means to have stood on your own, to have earned everything that you have in your life, and provides the perspective you need to appreciate what you have earned. But be careful with this one. There is always more to be had, and money does not mean happiness. In fact, your lesson to learn, Mike, is that the never-ending comparison will kill any hopes of your own happiness. So in roundup, my friend, just keep going. Learn to use the things you feel are against you, accept the things you can't change, and let them go. But own everything else you can change. And most importantly of all, don't stand back and blame the world for the way it is. If you don't like it, keep working and trying until you change it. And on one final note, if there is any chance of time travel, say yes to the Canadian rugby contract.
That was Mike Worden and a letter to myself.
Thank you for joining us. Till next time, you've been listening to NTH Voices.